This is an interview with Mrs. Della Cross, Dellacross, by an Oklahoma State University college student.
Was written up by her sister, and it's concerning their father and mother's trip to Oklahoma at the time of the run. David Alexander Cockrell, which is spelled David Alexander, and Cockrell, Cockrell, was born in Newton County, Missouri, on April 1st, 1860, and died January 7, 1924, at the age of 63 years and 9 months. At the time of his death, he lived at 716 East Randolph, Enid, Oklahoma. In 1879, he was married to Mary Jane Starry, Starry, at Paoli, Kansas. To this union were born 4 sons, Bernie, Charlie, Arthur, and Clyde. Also 1 daughter, Maud. His wife died in 1892 at Eureka, Kansas. In 1894, he married Patty Jane Lambert of Oklahoma. To this marriage 9 children were born: Alice, Effie, Dennis, Dewey, Theodore, Della, whom we are interviewing, and Francis. 2 children died in infancy. The mother of these children died January 16, 1954, at Pawnee, Oklahoma. Mr. and Mrs. Cockrell, who are Della's parents, are buried in the White Cemetery in Hunter, Oklahoma. This history was written and presented to the family of David Alexander Cockrell by his oldest daughter, Maud, of Enid, Oklahoma. This 2-page report written up by Maud is titled Pioneer Days, and at the top of it has a picture of David Alexander Cockrell, and this is Della's father. The Cherokee Strip is 58 miles wide by 180 miles long, used by the Cherokee Indians as an outlet to the Rocky Mountains. For the consideration of $7 million, the Indians released their claim to this beautiful land on July 19, 1893. President Cleveland issued a proclamation declaring the land open for settlement at 12 o'clock noon on the 16th day of September, 1893. On this date, tens of thousands of home seekers lined up on all sides of this land and looked over its borders, hoping to be successful in procuring a piece of it as his own. Some came to the land on horseback, some on wagons, buggies, and carts. Others were on foot. However, all were eagerly waiting to start the biggest horse race of all time. Some were successful, others were not. There were not enough claims for all, and long before evening practically all the land was taken. About the 25th of August, following President Cleveland's proclamation, Alex Cockrell, Nelson Turney, Hiram Lovett, Harry Carroll, and John Weldon, each with a horse and a team and a wagon, with Robert Hart as a driver, left their home near Eureka, Kansas, prepared to make the run into the Promised Land to secure a home for themselves. We drove to how do you pronounce that, Grandma? Caldwell. Caldwell, Kansas, and not being allowed to drive across the strip, we shipped our horses and wagons on the Rock Island to Hennessy, which was just across the line in what was known as Old Oklahoma. The next morning, after unloading our horses, we drove to Skeleton Creek, where we camped in the timber for about a week, waiting for the opening day. On the 14th day of September, we moved our camp out to Rice's store, which is now the town of Marshall, Oklahoma. Just north of there was a camp of United States soldiers, and also a government booth, where all who intended to make the run were obliged to register. On the morning of September 16th, we were allowed to line up at 10 o'clock, waiting for the signal at high noon. The waiting line was crowded as far as we could see in both directions. Some were so anxious to get started they did not wait for the signal, which was the firing of a gun by the soldier, but they started a few minutes ahead of time. Our crowd all staked claims of joining. Before the start, we had told the man driving the teams to follow the trail to Red Rock Creek and to wait there until we came for them. After we had staked our claims, two of our crowd went after them. As they had all the cooking utensils and eats, they were soon located and brought to camp. Then came the weary waiting to file. The time was spent between Enid and our claims waiting for our numbers to be called. It was a tiresome wait, standing in line in deep dust, and a drink of water had to be paid for. We finally reached the land office and filed and started for home about the 20th of October, or intended to, but the night before the horses wandered off, and we did not find them until noon the next day. We hunted a long time around the claims and found Nelson's pony and one of the team horses. I took the pony and one of the team horses and started north and east looking for them, thinking they might have started home, and sure enough they had. My horse, with lariat dragging, was leading and the rest were following. Madison Lamar had caught and tied them up. I soon had them back to camp, and after eating our dinner, we started for Neal, Kansas, a trip lasting about 4 days, dusty, hungry, and thirsty. In December, Alex, Harmon, Father, Turney, Ed Harris, and myself drove down to the claims and built 3 sod houses, Alex, Harmon's, and mine. Nelson built his when we moved down in the spring. The 3 families, Nelson's, Harmon's, and the Carrolls, loaded all our earthly possessions in a freight car. On the 22nd of February, we started overland in covered wagons, driving our extra horses and cows. We drove through deep snow until we got to the Oklahoma line. After that, there was no snow, and the prairie was beginning to look green. We reached our claims the first day of March. Alex and John Cockle drove in about the same time. Then began our pioneer days. Father and Turney came down with the freight car and unloaded in North Enid, and stored the goods and livestock there until we could haul them home. Every other day we drove to North Enid for a load. We had about 12 loads apiece, and it was some job. We put in the spring breaking sod, which we planted to Capricorn, but it was so dry it did not head. That fall we planted 40 acres of wheat and harvested 65 bushels. The second year was about the same, but the third year we harvested the biggest crop ever grown in this part of Oklahoma. Many fields making as much as 40 bushels per acre. That fall we built our house and farm. Then on. For several years in succession we had good crops and were well paid for all the hardships we endured the first 2.5 years. Okay, Della, this is the story of your father coming to Oklahoma. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about your father? What kind of person was he? What type of man was he?
He was a husky, ambitious fellow. He liked to work and farm and look after the family and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Okay, when you were younger, now you had a large family and there were a lot of brothers and sisters. And you had to do your own planting and stuff on your farm, is that correct?
Yeah, of course I was along the last. I didn't do much of it.
Oh, you didn't have to. You didn't have to do too much of that. Well, did you plant enough food to can and preserve for the winters to get you through when you were younger?
Yeah.
What type of stuff do you remember canning? How would your mother go about doing that? Do you remember?
She had plenty of potatoes. We always had a lot of potatoes.
Yeah.
Butchered lots of hogs.
Yeah.
And fried sausage down and covered it up in crocks with lard, rendered lard, poured all over the sausage. You cook the sausage.
Yeah.
Then you put it in crocks and cover it up with lard. And it would keep, you see, all summer. We'd eat that the next summer along with fried chicken.
So that sausage would keep underneath that lard?
Yeah. It kept good. It never got old or anything.
I see.
And we always had about 12 or 14 hogs to butcher every year, and 400 or 500 chickens in the summer, and
my goodness,
3 or 4 big beefs besides.
Yeah,
and
well,
all the vegetables and fruit and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, that's good. How would you store the what I'm interested in is, did you have to store did you have like a cellar to store any of your vegetables and stuff in to keep them?
Used to can all those.
So you kept.
Yeah, we had big batches of turnips. You see, you dig out a hole in the ground and bury those, cover them up with straw, put straw on top of the turnips, and then you'd put dirt on those and keep them all winter. They wouldn't freeze, you see.
Yeah.
But potatoes, we had cellar. We always take them down there. But the turnips and things like that, carrots and all, we leave them outside.
I see.
Cover them up, enough of dirt where they wouldn't freeze. But other vegetables, my mother always canned it.
Yeah. Did all the girls have to help in the family do that type of work?
Some of them done the dishes, and some of them cooked. They took turns about each one of my older sisters. They'd cook a week, and one of them wash dishes a week, and then they'd change about.
Yeah.
And one of them watched the smaller kids.
Yeah.
Went along like that.
Well, that's good. Now, I know that when all of you sat down to a meal that there'd be a large family that you'd have to prepare for. So, what was your home like? Did your father make any of the furniture or anything that was in that home?
Well, we had a big old homemade table was about the only thing. It was 16 feet long.
Yeah.
And had a big bench on each side,
A big wooden bench?
Big wooden bench for the boys to sit on and line them up, on each side of the table. We had a harvest crew every time.
Yes.
Of course, that was after we all arrived,
Yeah, I would think so. But you got through it just fine. I mean, everybody probably worked and done their part to help out.
Well, Dad used to have a baseball team around the community. It had my big brothers on it. He always went. And they did that every Sunday. They played baseball.
Oh, they did. Well, tell me about that. Would they do that after church? Did you go to church first?
Oh, yes. Dad had a big old 2-seated Surrey.
Yeah, Surrey with the fringe on top. Well, great.
Then they'd play baseball, come home and eat a big dinner and play baseball in the afternoon. See?
Yeah.
We always had a whole herd. A bunch of kids come in. Mother'd cook all day Saturday for Sunday dinner.
And prepare for them. Golly. I know she had to be a really dear woman,
Or she was a good cook, too. She could lamb cake, she could sure make a good stuff.
Yeah, she made a lot of them. Very good.
Yeah. Well, that's really interesting. I was going to ask you about that butchering. Do you remember seeing any of that done?
Sure, I watched it, watch her and butcher, and I've still got the iron kettle that we scalded the hogs with. heated the water to scald them over with. Of course, we had a big barrel. They would dig a hole in the ground slanch-wise, and scald these hogs, you know. And I still got the iron kettle we heated the tank in. I mean the water to scald hogs with. I still have that.
That's interesting. What about one thing I was thinking about? How would you go about making your own dairy products, or would you did you have cows and stuff to milk?
Oh, we had cows and churns and butter, you know, and all that kind of stuff. We had great big crocks, about 2-gallon crocks. You'd strain the milk in the crocks, let the cream settle.
Yeah.
I mean, it comes to top. Cream always comes to top. And they skim this cream off. And had great big old dasher churns, you know. And
Did you say dasher churns?
yeah.
Okay. Can you kind of describe what that was like? What they look like?
Well, it was a tall crockery thing.
Yeah.
Some of them about 3 gallon.
Yeah.
And I suppose probably about 30 inches tall, maybe 8 or 10 inches in diameter. And it had a lid with a hole in the thing. You had a stick in it. You bounce this stick up and down and made your butter.
I see.
Beat the cream, you see it.
Yeah.
First thing you know, you had butter.
Okay. So that's how you got your
we had
butter.
And buttermilk and lots of milk and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Now this question, I don't know whether I don't even know. But what type of refrigeration would you use to keep things real cool or cold, or how would you do that in the house, or did you use ice blocks or?
No, we never had any such things. They'd take maybe a towel and bring it out in cool water and
Yeah.
spread it over the top of your milk jar.
Yeah.
Down at the well, they had a trough where they pumped water to the horses and cattle. And they'd set crocks of milk sometimes in that trough, you know, as you pump the water through, I'd cool it off.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was wondering about. It's hard for me to realize. I mean, I know they didn't have refrigerators and stuff like that, but it's hard for me to imagine preserving your food and stuff inside the house, or keeping your stuff, from spoiling.
Well, there wasn't much left over.
Yeah.
They usually cooked and they ate it all up between one meal.
Yeah.
Well, that what they call them place where you kept your milk?
That's where we cured the meat.
Yeah, that's where you hung the meat.
We smoked the meat in the smokehouse and put the meat in there. Dad used hackberry wood to cure the meat.
Okay, now why would he do that? I don't know. I mean,
well, he had an iron kettle that he just built a fire with hackberry. It seemed to make a good flavor on the meat.
I see. Kind of like maybe a hickory flavor if you.
Yeah, they only use hackberry, and I've forgotten how many days it was that he would cure this. But anyway, he would fire this thing up with the coals, you know, let it smoke inside there, turn the meat over every day or two, and put salt on it. Put salt. And smoke it down with this hackberry wood. Of course, you didn't have a blaze. You just had a further smoke. Smudge, you might say.
Okay. I understand that. What about, did you bake bread?
Yeah, Mother baked bread every other day. She had 14 loaves of bread. It was about twice I'd say probably weigh about 3 pounds a piece.
My goodness.
And we had 14 loaves she'd bake every other day, besides biscuits for breakfast. And maybe cornbread for dinner. That would be in between, see?
And today, we can't even do that with it all fixed in the store.
Well, you couldn't beat a good bunch of fresh butter with a heel about an inch thick on the fresh bread.
That sounds good.
Warm bread, you could just disc of butter in.
That sounds great, Grandma.
Tastes good, too.
Yeah. what about some of the home remedies anything that you used for bites or anything that you used for fevers or anything when you were younger? Can you think of some of those things?
Oh, just for cold, turpentine and kerosene and olive oil mixed together. We put on a flannel cloth soak for that on your chest. It almost break up a cold in a couple of days. I don't know whether it was the smell or the cure. But
I don't know
anyway,
either.
that sort of thing. And then maybe Mother, we had a high fever or something, she'd give us a bath in warm water with soda in it.
I see.
And,
Warm water with soda.
of course, we had a cough. I had an uncle that fixed up some cough syrup one time, and he put pepper and vinegar and salt in it. And you're supposed to gargle your throat. Well, it either seared it or quit coughing. I don't know which one, but anyway, it worked.
Sounds like you could sneeze pretty good with something like
Tell
that.
you what, my sister that wrote this, you're still marking this down.
Yeah.
This is a little oddity.
Well, good. Go ahead and tell
When
me.
she was just a brand new baby, this Uncle John of mine, she was crying, and he was the old bastard that didn't get married till he's 50.
Uh-huh.
And he said, I'll tell you what to do to that kid. You give her some black coffee.
Black coffee.
And they did. That girl, when she was growing up, anybody that drank coffee at the table, she run around and eat all the grounds. If there's any grounds in the cup, she always eat the coffee right.
My goodness.
Oh, it's quite a deal.
Well, it sounds interesting to come from a large family like that, where everybody worked together
Oh, we
to
all had a good time.
help each other out. It really does. What about did you have any sort of clubs or organizations back then that you can recall? Did your mother go to any sort of clubs?
The only thing, she had time for her to take care of the kids.
Yeah, well, that's true. What about do you remember any songs that you kids used to sing, or any phrases that you used to use when you were little?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Dad used to play the fiddle.
Oh, he did. Tell me about that.
Well, we had dances. I can remember when I was a little kid, we had dances at home.
Yeah, you
And
had
all the
that.
neighbor kids come in.
Oh,
So he played for dances.
okay.
He said if the kids that were at home, he knew where they were.
Well, that's true.
So they could just come to our house and go ahead and dance and have a good time.
So you'd kind of have little socials at your house.
Yeah.
All the boys, all her, the first bunch of boys in that family, every one of them played some kind of music, like a piano or something.
So your family was musically inclined then?
Well, there was three of them that played for dances. Used to go around the community, just
Uh-huh.
community dances where they just met and had a good time.
Well, that's good.
They played the guitar and fiddle and
She had run the notes to a piano player, played the piano the past night.
Well, did you play any musical
No.
instrument? You didn't? Okay. I just thought you may have and never have told me. What about, did you ever make any soap, Grandma?
made lots of soap.
Well, tell me about that. How did you do that?
Well, we had, after they got to make a lye, we'd use lye in this lard,
Yeah.
What it was, you'd use the cracklings, which you'd render out your lard, you always had cracklings in it. Of course, they call them something different now. But anyway, Mother would take these, and when she didn't have lye, which you didn't have back in the early day, she'd take the ashes and out of the cook stove, one thing and another, and pour water on it, and let that set for a while, and then it come off. When it come off, settle down, come off, that was your lye. You could use that on your cracklings and stir it and make lye out of that water that was on this ashes.
Really?
Yeah, and you use that, pour that on there, and they used to have a little, maybe kettle full, maybe probably 15 or 20 gallon of it at a time, and cut it out in great big chunks, probably 6 inches square, and maybe 6 by 6 by 8 or 10 size soap, you know, lay it out and let it dry for 2 or 3 days.
You could use that for several different things?
Yeah, everything.
Oh, use everything? Washing clothes?
Sure.
Now tell me, how would you go about washing your clothes? Did you wash on a washboard?
Washboard, that's all it was. You know, that's all it was to use, a little washboard.
Yeah. Did you use the tin tubs?
Yeah, Mother had tubs, but they used to be wooden tubs.
Oh, wooden tubs. Were they round?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Round wooden tubs.
So you'd have to heat all your water?
Water out in these old iron kettles. So we, heat them outdoors. Sometimes we had washboarders. It was too cold or something, but we heat them in on the cook stove.
Oh my goodness, that sounds like a lot of work.
It was a lot of work. It'd take her all day, it was.
Yeah. For that many people.
Yeah. Tell you what. Hang out a whole line of clothes.
Yeah.
From here to yonder.
Yeah, that's true. What sort of water system did you have?
Just a well.
You had an
Outside well.
Okay.
Windmill treated.
Well, not for years and years we had any. Boys used to pump water.
Yeah. Can you think of, I'm going to ask you about like some common practices that might have been carried on in the community. Say, for instance, if someone would get married in the community, can you remember anything that they might do to the bride and groom? Would they have any sort of...
We always had it called chivalry.
Okay, tell me about that.
I never been on one. I don't know, sometimes we used to throw in a water tank, you tell them about it. You know more about chivalries. You've been on chivalries. I never did.
Chivalry.
Yeah.
You know what a chivalry is?
I don't know. What would they do to the bride and groom? Would they take them both out before the wedding?
After they get married and come home. Sometimes I've been out chivalry before we sat around waiting for the bride and groom to come home, maybe 3 or 4 o'clock or 5 in the morning. And if they didn't hand out the treats right now, they'd have the candy and cigars now. If they had to wait around a bit, they'd take the man out and throw us in the water tank.
Oh, I see.
I don't ever remember seeing a woman ever put in the water tank, but I've seen a lot of men just take him out and throw him in the water tank. And if somebody didn't like him, they'd take him out and keep him all night.
That's cruel.
Keep him.
Enjoy their men, that's the guys do it.
Yeah.
They go out there and shiver him and take shotguns, take old tin cans, or these pans, anything else to make noise,
That's interesting. It sounds kind of like a little initiation before you get
One time
started.
my brother went out to the shiver him, oldest brother. He had a half a dozen great big firecrackers in his hand. Some guy picked up lip on him, so. And he just split his fingers like that right down.
Oh. I guess that's maybe why they don't get quite so involved nowadays, is in case something would happen.
Possibly get killed out of shivering. People
Yeah.
would take shotguns, and shoot. Anything to make noise.
Yeah. Well, that's getting a little traumatic there, or especially for getting married. Okay, Della, what about, I feel funny calling you Della, Grandma. I'll just call you Grandma. What about when there was a death or something in the community? Did everybody get together and bring in food or anything like that?
Everybody was always there, really. There wasn't anyone that wasn't there right there to help their neighbors.
Yeah.
People used to be good neighbors. All of them. Not just a few, but the whole bunch.
Well, tell me about that. what were some of the things you do for your neighbors? Like, for instance, if it was harvest time or something?
Well, what they did was, you know, they go help whatever they need to do and need help with or anything of that sort, you know. And sometimes they go. Of course, you didn't have funeral homes then where anyone passed away. You take a funeral. They'd always bring them home. Some of the
They
neighbors
bring
would sit up with them all night, you know,
Yeah.
with
with the
the
deceased.
deceased person and all that sort of thing. They usually two of them did that. It was usually men. Anyway, any of them needed, they always had neighbors they'd count on.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. What about, well, I guess that when girls were younger and they were preparing for weddings and things, did they have such things as hope chests and things like that for girls when they were
Yeah,
young?
girls had hope chests. They started in when they were real young. They'd have hope chests of some kind, you know.
Did
Something.
your mother try to prepare you before you got married? I mean, did you have any sort of things that you had to save or collect before?
No,
Well, when a young person decided to get married in the community, were there any showers or any events given to help the young people out? Can
not
you?
ordinarily. Ordinarily, their folks helped them.
Yeah.
Most people would. Of course, we didn't go to farm, but most of them seemed like most of them went to farming somewhere, and their folks would usually give them a horse, team horses. And my dad always gave the boys and the girls both team horses and a cow, and mother gave them some chickens and maybe some pig and any tea towels and you know things like that, utensils and one thing and another. Their own folks always done that. But I don't recollect any of the neighbors that bringing anything. Do you?
No.
There's always
Sometimes a person barn or house will burn down, and all the neighbors come in and help build it back. I don't think they ever had any shower or nothing like that.
I think that was the good neighbor policy too that he's talking about. Grandpa's talking about. Would you like to talk about some of your brothers and sisters and some of the things that you did when you were younger with them? What about the twins, the two boys? What ages were they?
well, they were. Let's see, they were 11 years older than I, and really they were out on their own before I was
Yeah.
very big, you know. But both of them went to work in the oil field after they got about 18 years old. That's pretty well a bunch of oil production around the community, and they just worked in oil fields.
Did the boys? I wanted to ask you. Were the boys pretty well oriented with the idea that after you get a certain age, you just automatically go out and did they try to pursue some type of career or some type of job? Whereas the women, did they pretty well just stay home and raise the family? I mean, was it
Well, there was only one of them that went away to college. That was my oldest half brother. He took a business course over at Tonkerville. But then the next brother, next to him, he went out in western Oklahoma in Beaver County, homesteaded the farm out there.
I see.
But he took typhoid fever while he was there, and he was real sick, so Dad went after him and brought him back home. But the other boys, they didn't leave home or seek any kind of jobs. Just when they got married, while they went to farming.
Yeah, they pretty well just carry on with farming.
So the younger boys, the one next to him, younger, which is older than I am. He works on the oil field too.
Well, what about, okay, what about the schooling when you were younger? Can you talk a little bit about maybe the schools that you might have gone to, or how many years you went, or what type they were? Were they little one-room schoolhouses? Or?
Yeah, we just had a one-room schoolhouse in the country, and there was only one of them beside myself. Well, there's two beside myself that never went beyond the 8th grade. And but they taught 8 grades in this country school. And there used to be as many as 40 students. And some of my brothers took the 8th grade over about 4 times. Dad always said, well, there's something you didn't learn last year, you go back again.
Yeah.
So, but I only went 3 years there, and then we moved to Enid.
Then you moved to Enid.
So, back in those days, you didn't have to take one year at a time. Whatever you was able to do, that's what they put you on through. Now, I went 3 years at country school. When I went to Enid, the 4th year I started school, I was in the 7th grade.
Oh my goodness! So it was just a continuous operation, whereas you went from one grade right into
another. Whatever you was able to do, you just went on, and you was able to do it. Well, they put you there.
Well, that's good. You know, I think that kind of we've definitely gotten away from that type of school system. Now everything's so structured that you have to, it seems like, advance according to the school's system rather than at your own pace. So I guess you were just kind of learning as it came best for you at the time.
But we had a spelling match every Friday afternoon. That was the thing that they all looked forward to.
Well, tell me about that. Every Friday?
Every Friday afternoon, the school had a spelling match.
Yeah.
And everybody went to school was in it. And the teacher gave out the words, whatever grade you were capable of spelling, that's the word you got, But everybody enjoyed it every time.
Yeah.
We always took our lunch and studied.
Could you spell about any word?
Huh?
Could you spell about any word?
Well, I never had too much trouble spelling.
I bet you did real well with them, didn't you?
Well, I did good enough. I got by.
Yeah, well, that's one of my problems today. I should carry a dictionary with me every place I go. I don't know why, but I always get I before E, I get all that stuff mixed up. I never could remember all the basics when it came to spelling words, and I have my own system of doing it. I wish, do you think learning was more disciplined then? Do you think you actually, worked harder, studied harder, more anxious to learn?
Yeah, you had teachers that were dedicated in teaching the kids, so they did learn.
Yeah.
And of course, they was all the classes in the same room, and they really got it. I mean, you didn't get into another grade until you didn't know it. And they could all spell and read and arithmetic. Of course, that was the 3 main things, and every one of them got it. I really can't remember a dumb one in the whole bunch that didn't get their lessons. We lived in the middle of a mile up there, and we had last day dinners. Last day of school, we always had a big dinner. Had a program and a big dinner.
Yeah.
And there was a neighbor sitting there talking to another neighbor, and he said, now, up south of Cockrell's there on the hill, there was some people lived up there, and they had 10 kids. And he said, you come on down the next quarter, and Benson's lived there, they was Bohemians, and they had 9. And then he said, you cross the creek, and there was a dozen Cockrells. He said, I tell you, there's a herd in that mile.
Well.
But dinners, I tell you, there was plenty to eat.
Yeah.
And they's all there. Everybody in the country's there. There wasn't anybody that missed the last day dinner.
Well, that's good. I'm glad that they had
That was
celebration.
sometimes the only social event of the whole year.
Yeah.
Or had a program at Christmas. They used to have a program.
Okay, now tell me about the Christmas.
Oh, they had a program at school at Christmas time.
Uh-huh.
Always had a program. And they'd have an exchange. The teacher usually gave the kids a little present of some kind.
Did you put on Christmas plays?
Yeah, they always had a play and then little readings and things like that.
So that could be considered as kind of a social event too for them.
But that was about the size of the deal, except the dances that we used to have for the neighbor young folks. Well, I can remember having dances. Of course, I was just little, but they always let me stay up and watch.
Well, yes, everybody wants to do that when they're little like that.
Dad used to play. He played for dances back in the early day, and they'd take up a collection after the dance, and the last dance he played for, he only made a quarter. So he didn't play for any more dances, only at home.
Oh yeah, I don't blame you. A quarter's not enough to keep on playing out, especially.
Let me tell you,
After that, he kept the kids at home.
Yeah.
these days, of course, looked about as big as a wagon wheel now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I still have his violin.
You do. That's great. I'm glad that you kept those kind of
He
things.
gave it to me. I don't know why. It was about the only one, about the last one I thought I should have it. So, anyway, he gave it to me, and I still got it.
What about, can you, remember your mother making the clothes and stuff for the family, or making quilts, or any type of,
Well, she made all the clothes for the girls. In the early days, she made, when they first come to this country, the boys, the older boys was out of overalls. And they had a tarpaulin, which back in those days they called it a wagon sheet. It was a canvas thing. And I've heard her tell this a number of times that she made them overalls out of this wagon sheet. That was what they wore for overalls. It's made out of this wagon sheet. But she made all the boys' shirts, all us girls, everything, underclothes and dresses and all that sort of thing. She made every bit of it. Quilts and comforts and everything.
Would you'd say that she'd do all that on her own? Well, did they ever have get-togethers where someone would maybe help with a friendship quilt or something like that you remember, or can you remember?
Not till I was growing. Nobody ever. Well, my sisters were growing before they ever had anything like that. Nobody had time to have so many kids there to stay home and take care of it.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess I can't. I don't really realize
There's lots of times Mother never left the farm for a year at a time.
Yeah.
Never was off the farm.
She stayed right there the whole
She stayed
time.
right there all that time. And we only lived 5.5 miles from town. And it'd be a year at a time. She'd never even get to go to town.
That seems hard for me to believe, but I realize that.
Well, you have a dozen kids to look after.
Yeah.
You see? And of course some of the older ones, my oldest half-brother, he would take some of the younger ones and set them on his lap to feed them at mealtime and that sort of thing. I've heard her tell that lots of times.
Yeah.
But otherwise, she said she never had a minute to fool around yet.
That's
There's
true.
always something to do.
Yeah. I'll have to. Okay. What about the hunting part of it? Did your father and your brothers participate in that?
The boys used to hunt a lot for possums and skunks. And Dad used to go squirrel hunting a lot and fish, which at Red Rock Creek.
About the hunting, but you said also there were wild grapes that grew or wild fruit that grew?
Yeah, it grew on Red Rock Creek. They used to pick some of those for made a little wine, but ordinarily they made jelly out of it and grape butter. Dad didn't much believe in drinking anything with water, coffee or milk.
Yeah.
That's about the end of that.
Mhm.
But I've heard him tell he made a barrel one time down the basement or down the cellar.
Mhm.
I think some of the boys got in it one time. They're all gone. And they made molasses. They used to have sugar cane. They planned a little bit for molasses. There used to be a molasses mill of them down the creek somewhere. I don't know where, but I mean, I never did see it in my time, but I've heard them tell about it. But anyway, they raised enough cane to make their own molasses.
Your family did?
Yeah.
I wonder how they went about that. I don't understand these things because I never had to make anything like that.
Well,
but that sounds interesting.
They used to tell me they stripped the outside off of this cane, stalk of cane, and cooked the pulp more or less, and stuff like that. Anyway, this sorghum mill they call it. They run it through some kind of a press all this juice out, and then they cook this stuff down to where you had syrup and molasses out of it. I never did see any of it. I mean, any of the meal or anything of that sort. But anyway, that's what I was told.
Her aunt had got up on the barrel and the barrel head give in.
No, I don't know who that was. I forgot now. But anyway, they fell in a barrel of molasses. They just pulled them out when they had used the molasses. They said, well, it didn't hurt anything. What was on her was still on her. What was left on her be all right.
Yeah, that's true. It shouldn't really bother that much, I wouldn't think.
So I don't know.
Okay, now you wanted to say something about the farms.
Well, one of them was taken in the run. The other was purchased later. And my mother raised turkeys enough to file on this farm, which cost $14 to file on it. And she sold turkeys at 3 cents a pound after they were grown. And she had enough turkeys to make up this $14 to file on this farm.
Well, my goodness, that's amazing. Did she do that mostly on her own? Raise those?
Yeah, she did that. Took care of all that herself.
So she could do that. Well, I know that you come from a hard-working family, and I know that must be why you do so much for everybody today. Well, Grandma, I'd like to thank you for letting me interview you for my class, and I've really enjoyed it, and I've found out things about you that I didn't know, and I also thank you for letting me read the paper about your father when he was first coming to Oklahoma in the run, because I think maybe we had mentioned that before, but I don't think I had ever got to look at that, and I do appreciate that.
You're most welcome, Cathy.
Okay, thank you. This is Cathy Neiberg, and I have interviewed Della Cross, Dellacross, and this is July 13th, 1977. 1977.
This is the conclusion of the interview with Hazel Shaw, SHAW, of Vicey, Oklahoma, VICI, on May 31st, 1977, and this is an interview by Michelle Andrews.
We lost her.
she took a cold, and this dust had settled in her lungs over the period that we'd been in the Panhandle, and had blocked her lungs, and she could not get rid of the dust and the sputum, that she should have because of the weakened condition of her lungs and this dust. And this black duster blew in about, as after the service, I would say 4 o'clock. And all at once we were sitting there, and we felt a quietness that was unnatural. And we looked out of our sunroom windows, and it was rolling in. And you have never seen a tornado or a bank of black clouds that was so dense as that was. And when it struck, it was so black that lights did not shine through it. And the electric light bulbs in our home, within a half hour, we couldn't see across the rooms in our homes. And it was total blackness outside. Cars could not drive because the lights wouldn't shine through the wall of dirt, the black dirt. And to tell you just how it was, our sunroom was 3 sides, was all glass, all windows. And cars drove up into our yard. We had no fence around the yard, and they drove up for protection. And they sat there until 10 o'clock that night with their lights turned on, shining in our, supposedly, in our windows. But we didn't know they were out there because we couldn't see the light through the black dirt. It was that dense. I said 10 o'clock. I believe it was 9 when I mentioned that it was a double funeral, and they were taking my grandmother to Texoma for burial. And they turned onto a side road with their backs to the storm in order that they might breathe. And they sat there about 3 hours before they could flash their car lights through the dirt a foot or two to see where the road was to get back into town. So they came back into town and sat there all night, and then went the next day to Texoma. It had cleared up enough that they could get through then for burial. It's about 40 miles, from Texoma to Boise City.
How long did the years of the Dust Bowl last? My imagination was just, a lifetime from the stories that I've heard.
The first ones began, I think, in about, let's say, the drought began in about 31 or 2, and the dust began blowing soon after that because the farmers had gone completely wild over planting wheat. They were making such good and wonderful wheat crops that they plowed all the pasture land up for wheat, and that is what caused so much of the dirt, you see. There was no grass roots to hold it. They learned from that one experience, they do not plow up anymore the land like they used to. They leave it in pasture land and grassland, as much of it as they can. Did I answer your question?
I think so. How long did it last?
How long? We left there in 37. It was beginning to get better then, but it lasted, I would say, 8 to 10 years, the worst of it. Maybe not the worst, but over a span of 8 or 10 years before they were able to raise good crops again. The farmland was so piled up with dunes, sand dunes, that it took them a year with their plows and equipment, discs, I believe they used on the back of their tractors, to pull these sand dunes down on a level so they could level up their land enough to farm it and plant more crops.
Well, that was also during the Great Depression.
Yes.
And so many people left and went to California.
Yes.
I wonder about the people who stayed here, what made them decide to stick it out.
Love of land, I guess, and love of their homes. Now, I guess it was bad here in Dewey County, but nothing like it was in the Panhandle, because you had the trees and the creeks and the hills and more grassland. I don't think the land was ever plowed up here in this area like it was in the Panhandle. But, they just plowed their ranches and everything up and put it to wheat, and they really were going great guns with wheat until bottom dropped out, the price dropped, you see. Then they couldn't make anything out of it, and by that time the dirt was blowing, and they had no way of stopping it. And it just blew, and it blew and blew some more and kept blowing. And so I would say over a span of perhaps 8 to 10 years, we would call the Dust Bowl days. But the land was very fertile after the farmers pulled those sand dunes down and worked it up. They had wonderful crops again then for a few years.
How did they exist or get by while they were having so many troubles? Was it on a self-cooperative type of basis where they...
I wonder now how we did get by. We didn't suffer for, if you mean food and such as that. I remember I was teaching at the time they began, and the farmers didn't have enough money to pay all of their taxes at one time. But if they could get a few dollars together, they would go into the courthouse and pay that much on their taxes, and the school board in return would issue me a warrant. Most of my warrants were in $10 warrants, and I would hold those $10 warrants until there was enough money in the school district treasury to issue me a $10 warrant. And the food, of course, was very inexpensive. We just never did suffer for food. We couldn't buy a great lot, of course, of clothing or such. I remember I bought a beautiful coat that I loved and wore for, possibly 3 or 4 years for $12.50. It was a cashmere coat, and it was a beautiful coat. And she took one of my school warrants and said, I'll wait for your next school warrant for the other 2.5 on it. So that's the way things were. They're just...
Did they get a lot of credit at the stores for things that they had to have and couldn't pay? I know some of that's done now in town.
Not a lot of credit. People had their farm products and their own meat, and they raised everything on the farm practically. So they had food, and the grocers were unable to issue a lot of credit because they had to have money to restock. The bank bought up many of the warrants at a discount, of course. Well, the stores took warrants too, I remember now. They took some of our school warrants, but would discount them, of course, for handling. But we were glad to that they did even that. But I drove back and forth to my school, which was out 15 miles from Boise City. And we had money to buy gas with, and we just didn't have much money, but it went a long ways. I guess that's an easy way to say it.
How much did gasoline cost you then?
I don't remember. I wish I did, but I don't remember how much it was per gallon. I'm sure it was very nominal, though. And then my husband, along with our funeral home, he also worked at the port of entry. Many people, with their, when they would have a funeral service, they just were unable to pay. Well, naturally, you being in that business, you were going to take care of them. That was your job. And they would pay when they could, but it wasn't always very prompt. And so as a side job, he worked at the state port of entry, Oklahoma Port of Entry, which was located in Boise City. He would work 8 hours, I believe it was. I believe they ran 3 shifts. And he would work 8 hours. And, of course, trucks coming into Oklahoma or leaving Oklahoma would have to register and weigh and give an account of what they were hauling and how much, and their destination and all. And that there had to be a record made of that, you see. There is yet in many places, crossing a state line, you must do that.
I wasn't aware of that, or at least at Boise City.
They what?
I wasn't aware that they had that out there.
I don't know whether there's still one at Boise City, but I assume there's one close to the state line somewhere.
Interesting.
There's one, I passed one not long ago. I was going up to Kansas, and it is, where was that? It's up north of Alva, I believe, on the, near the Kansas line, close to Hartner, I believe, Kansas, north of Alva anyway.
You mentioned the Shaw Cabin being on Camp Creek, and I've heard a lot about the Camp Creek Church. Is that located down nearby there?
It is. The Camp Creek Church is about 2 miles from where our log cabin is, about 2 miles from the homestead land. And it's a beautiful little country church. And of course, for many years, they worshiped in the schoolhouse, the Camp Creek schoolhouse, which was just a very small one-room schoolhouse. But in later years, then they built a church a half-mile west of the Camp Creek schoolhouse and used the schoolhouse for a community center. And the church was just real nice. It had the sanctuary and nursery and several classrooms, which was good for a little country church, you know. And it is very near the creek. Many people built very near the creek so they could have water for their stock and plenty of wood, you know, for burning. And I know when Grandfather Shaw came down and homesteaded, claimed his homestead, he came directly across the rich mutual flats. That wasn't what he was looking for. He wasn't looking for good land. He was looking for wood and water. Those were essential for one to live. And he just came just entirely across that wonderful rich farmland up there because he knew he couldn't use the farmland without wood and water to take care of his family. So he found this little farm that was quite good and also had good pasture land and wood and water. And that was the reason for him stopping there.
Where is that located from Visay? Is it east of town?
It is 9 miles east and 5 miles south, I believe, is the location of it. And we have it fixed just very homey. The little bedroom that we replaced, we tore the old bedroom off and rebuilt a bedroom, and it's all paneled and carpeted, and we can sleep 8 people in this one bedroom. We have 3 sets of bunk beds, and they each sleep 2, and then we have a double bed with inner spring and all. So the Boy Scouts go down, and senior citizens have gone down. And in the main part of the log cabin, there is a wood-burning stove, an old range, and an old cabinet, and some tables and some divans, and just to make yourself comfortable. And the big